Over the past 36 hours, the United States and its partners have launched Operation Epic Fury, one of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen. Nobody's seen anything like it. We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes.
Welcome back to the channel. Today is Monday, March 2nd, 2026. It has been just over 72 hours since the United States took decisive military action against the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the political establishment in Washington is, predictably, spiraling. We are going to break down exactly why this strike was not a choice, but a necessity born from a dangerous, long-term breakdown in our own legislative process. We are also going to look at how the media is spinning this, attempting to paint a picture of aggression while intentionally ignoring the nuclear countdown that forced the president's hand. And finally, we will connect the dots between our foreign policy vulnerabilities and the persistent refusal of Congress to secure our domestic energy independence, which puts us in these precarious positions in the first place. If you're new here, I'm John Gray, and we're building a community of people who support our president and use facts and logic to prove it. We need voices like yours in this fight against emotional manipulation and bad faith rhetoric, so hit that subscribe button and stick around. In the early hours of February 28th, the United States faced a binary choice regarding the Islamic Republic of Iran: allow a nuclear threshold to be crossed that would fundamentally alter the balance of power in the Middle East, or act immediately to prevent it. Technical data provided to the White House indicates the breakout time for weapons-grade material at the facility known as Pickaxe Mountain was less than 7 days. To wait for a formal declaration of war from a gridlocked Congress would have meant waiting for the threat to become reality. This is the logic of a failing system. The president acts unilaterally because the legislature has effectively abdicated its power. We need to be very clear about what happened here. This was not an act of whimsy or some political theater designed to poll well. This was an act of survival. Intelligence agencies confirmed that the enrichment levels at the facility had spiked to 68%, moving rapidly toward the 90% required for a nuclear device. The 7-day clock wasn't a prediction, it was a technical certainty. Consider the position this puts the commander-in-chief in. If he waits, he is responsible for allowing a nuclear Iran. If he acts, he is criticized for circumventing the legislative branch. But here is the reality that the talking heads on cable news won't tell you. Congress has systematically ignored its war powers for 50 years. They have created a massive constitutional vacuum. They have left a void that the executive branch is forced to fill, because when the legislature refuses to vote, to authorize, or to deliberate, they are not protecting the Constitution, they are abandoning it. Think about the sheer scale of the failure. We have senators who have spent the last 2 years debating the minutiae of domestic spending bills, while the geopolitical reality of the world shifted underneath them. They treat the War Powers Resolution of 1973 like a suggestion, not a responsibility. They are more concerned with their committees and their re-election campaigns than with the fundamental security of the nation. So, when the president receives a report, a specific terrifying report, that an adversary is 7 days away from nuclear capability, he cannot call a town hall meeting. He cannot wait for a committee chair to schedule a hearing 3 weeks from now. He has to act. You see that coverage? It is designed to make you feel uneasy. It is designed to make you question the timing, the legality, and the necessity. But ask yourself this: what would the alternative have been? A committee hearing? A partisan debate while the centrifuges continued to spin? The president's actions were the consequence of decades of congressional inaction. We are living in a time where the legislature has effectively checked out of its most serious responsibility. They have left the executive branch to clean up decades of accumulating threats, and when the president takes necessary action to prevent a nuclear catastrophe, he is criticized for doing exactly what the system forced him to do. The consequences of this are clear. We are governed by precedent, not by law. Unless Congress reclaims its constitutional role, the cycle of unilateral action will continue, and the safety of the nation will increasingly rely on the judgment of one person rather than the collective will of the people's representatives. This strike proves that the checks and balances are broken, not because the president grabbed too much power, but because Congress threw theirs away. But the failure isn't just happening in the halls of Congress. It is happening on your television screens and in your social media feeds. Because once the strike occurred, the narrative machine immediately kicked into gear. Moving on to our second story, we have to address the media narrative that has emerged over the last 48 hours. We are seeing a concerted effort by progressive outlets to frame this strike as a warmongering move designed to distract from domestic issues. This is a textbook example of emotional manipulation. They want you to believe that this was a political maneuver rather than a strategic defensive strike. If you look at the rhetoric, they are avoiding the technical reality of the 7-day breakout entirely. They are focusing on the unilateral nature of the strike to stir up fear. But notice what they don't say. They don't offer a strategy for how the United States should have responded to the imminent nuclear threat. They just say, it's too aggressive. That isn't an argument. That is a talking point. It is a way to avoid the hard truth that the world is a dangerous place, and sometimes leadership requires making difficult choices that don't fit into a 24-hour news cycle. When they use terms like escalation, what they are really saying is that we should have accepted the risk. They are comfortable with a world where the United States accepts a diminished role. They are comfortable with a world where we negotiate from a position of weakness. But that is not how you keep the peace. You keep the peace by demonstrating the capacity and the will to stop threats before they materialize. This media narrative is designed to make you feel guilty for being secure. They want you to worry about international norms, while our adversaries ignore those very same norms to acquire weapons of mass destruction. It is a false dilemma. The choice isn't between war and peace. The choice was between a decisive strike and an inevitable nuclear future. You hear that? That language about international norms is the same language we heard before the previous administration allowed Iran to expand its influence across the region. The norms are what got us here. The norms are what allowed the breakout time to shrink to 7 days in the first place. By sticking to these abstract concepts, these politicians are effectively arguing for a policy of appeasement. They believe that if we just talk long enough, our enemies will decide to stop being our enemies. History has proven time and time again that this is a fantasy. Strength is the only language that deters aggression. When the president acts, he is speaking that language. It's messy, it's uncomfortable, and the media will never give him credit for it, but it keeps the nuclear threshold from being crossed. That is the job, and that is why he was elected. But there is an underlying economic reality here that ties all of this together, the energy question. Because every time we engage in these maneuvers, it impacts your wallet, and that is a direct result of our energy policy. Finally, we need to talk about the connection between this strike and our domestic energy policy. You might ask, John, what does a strike on Iran have to do with energy prices here at home? The answer is everything. We are currently beholden to a volatile global oil market because for years we have allowed our own energy infrastructure to be hamstrung by regulations and political opposition. When we are energy independent, we aren't at the mercy of the geopolitical shifts in the Middle East. We aren't forced to intervene or worry about supply lines being cut because we have our own, right here in the ground, under our feet. The fact that we are still so sensitive to these disruptions is a direct result of a failure to prioritize American energy independence. When we are not producing enough to supply ourselves and our allies, the price of every barrel of oil on the global market fluctuates based on who is rattling the saber in the Strait of Hormuz. If we were producing at full capacity, we would have the leverage to insulate ourselves from these shocks. We would be the ones setting the market, not reacting to it. We have the capacity to be a net exporter of energy, which would not only lower costs for you at the pump, but also give the United States unparalleled leverage on the global stage. Instead, we are stuck in a cycle of managing crises abroad because we refuse to fully utilize our resources at home. This strike was a necessity but it is a necessity that could have been avoided if we had secured our energy dominance years ago. We have to stop apologizing for our strengths and start leveraging them. Imagine an America that isn't afraid of a price spike when tensions rise in the Middle East. That America is possible, but it requires us to stop listening to the people who say that drilling is dangerous and start listening to the people who say that dependence is dangerous. Ultimately, the events of these last few days serve as a stark reminder of the state of our union. We have an executive branch that is forced to act because the legislative branch has gone quiet. We have a media that prioritizes political narratives over national security. And we have an energy policy that keeps us vulnerable to the whims of foreign adversaries. But we also have a leader who is willing to make the hard call, who is willing to endure the criticism, and who is willing to act when the survival of this nation is on the line. The question is not whether the president should have power, but why Congress has surrendered it. Leave your evidence-based analysis of the War Powers Resolution and the necessity of this operation in the comments below. For further breakdowns on how the institutional health of our government impacts our foreign policy, ensure you are subscribed to Logic Bridge. Share this video if you believe it is time for Congress to do its job, and I will see you back here tomorrow.